Hello everybody and welcome back to the Backlogs channel, and if I'm being honest with you, I don't want to film this video, but I will for one specific reason. I said that I was going to buy every Switch 2 game that came out, and I was going to review them after I either beat them or I put enough time into them to form an opinion about them. And I made this promise before the Switch 2 came out. I have delivered on that promise so far, but I've gotten to this point where Age of Imprisonment came out, and I put it in, I played it for a little bit, I enjoyed what I played, but I got to this point where I realized I don't like roguelikes, and I don't like warrior games, and basically what Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment is a roguelike Warriors game. That's all it is, with Zelda characters and small cutscenes in between. That's what the game is. That's what all the other releases were, and I really thought maybe since it's Zelda and there's gonna be Zelda characters and I'm gonna know the characters and the lore of it, I'd enjoy it. I was wrong. I don't like Warriors games, and this game kind of really made me realize that. I just don't like the idea of sitting down and kind of just turning my brain off and just destroying enemies, like lines of enemies, and pressing the same 2 or 3 buttons over and over until I destroy all the enemies in a pack, and then going a little bit further in the level where it's very linear. It tells you exactly where to go, and just doing that again and again and again. And even if the enemies are different, they all feel the same, because there's a pack of 100 of them coming at you. So obviously they're too weak to do anything on their own, so they're kind of just these little things, like little ants that are coming at you, and they all have one attack that they can do towards you, but you don't even really see it because it's very congested and there's a whole lot of action going on the whole time, and it's hard to see. It kind of reminds me how in action movies, when you're in a dark scene in the movie, you can't see any of the details, and then they start fighting in the dark, and it's very hard to see because the camera's switching every 2 seconds to a different angle to show off a fight scene. Some people love that, where it's very high action, hard to tell what's going on, knowing that there's like action happening but not seeing every full detail of it. That's a good way of how I would describe a Warriors game to be. There's a lot of action going on in the game, but it's kind of hard to tell details and what's really going on. So how Hyrule Warriors starts is you are Zelda and you just came back into the past, where it's kind of the flip side, where the memories that you get in Tears of the Kingdom, they are, you get little droplets of what Zelda was doing behind the scenes with the old rulers of Hyrule and the rulers of each tribe, like the Gerudos and the Zoras and all that. You're basically in that storyline, and it's very more in-depth and in detail, which I'm a very big fan of. I think Tears of the Kingdom, between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, had a better story, and had a better wrapping the game into the story, instead of kind of just being like, yeah, there is a story, but the game is mainly about you going and making your own story, not following the main game. I think Tears of the Kingdom, every single thing you're going to do is enwrapped and encased with what is happening in the story in that moment, or in that kind of area on the map. So I really enjoyed the story. So going into Age of Imprisonment, the main thing that was pushing me to finally actually try out a Warriors game was the story, and getting through the actual gameplay of kind of nothing to do with the story, just going along to the next cutscene. I was basically going into the game to see the cutscenes. It's kind of like how people, when they play Kingdom Hearts games, they kind of play the first one and all the spin-offs. They kind of, some people that just want to know about the story to go into Kingdom Hearts 2, They just watch the cutscenes so they understand the story going forward, like Raid Chain of Memories and the 365 over 2 days or whatever it's called. All those games, they just watch the cutscenes so that way they can go straight into the actual gameplay of Kingdom Hearts 2 itself. That is kind of what I was going to be doing for Age of Imprisonment, just getting through the gameplay so I can watch all the cutscenes and kind of watch it, almost like a movie that I am forced to play certain scenes throughout the game in between. And not a great way to go into a game, I gotta say. It'll really make those sections of the game where you have to play and be interested enough to not die and like know what's going on slightly to get to those cutscenes. Which brings me to another point of Warriors games are unforgiving. They have this thing where you go from chapter to chapter. So you have one big section of cutscenes, part of the lore, all that stuff. Then you start going into a chapter. That is where all the gameplay is, with tiny cutscenes in between, which are important, but they're chapters. So you can't save the game until you beat the chapter. Now, I might be wrong about that, but from my experience and how far I played about 3 or 4 hours of the game, there was no way to save the game until you beat an entire chapter. And I would say for the unexperienced Warriors game player such as me, that either took anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes. So you really have to devote yourself to sitting down and devoting your time to an entire chapter, so that way if you have to leave suddenly or something and turn off the game, it doesn't completely reset you back to the beginning of that chapter. I assume this is the same way for all Warriors games, but I mean, I can only speak on this one. I don't like it. I mean, that might work for some people where they play long sessions and they finish after they do a certain amount of chapters and stuff like that. I don't have that type of time. When I'm playing video games, I only have short spurts on most occasions to get through a tiny portion of the game at a time. I don't have these long sit-down sessions. I kind of wish there was a way to go into the settings and autosave your game. Maybe there was and I never figured it out. And this whole section might just be stupid. I'm just talking about something that doesn't even matter. But from what I saw, I don't like the fact that you have to wait in between each chapter to save your game progress. Also, I mean, I was talking about this a little bit earlier, but the enemies, they all feel the same except for when you get to a boss, and a boss just kind of feels like do whatever button the game is telling you to do on the screen. And then if you avoid them until you can do the certain button that the game tells you, then you're good. That's the only strategy to it. Just dodge until you have an opening, and then the game will tell you what to do from there. Very much so, they make mechanics a little too overly complicated to where they have to tell you how to do them and when is the right time to do them in the game every time you should. So they're basically making a problem of making game mechanics too confusing for the average player, and then even though they are cool and they're cool inclusions, they're not simplified enough. They don't make sense unless you are told when to use them. But then that just ruins the point of having multiple different mechanics that you can use to defeat these enemies. It's more of like a point and click where they tell you where to point, where to click, and you're just along for the journey. It's very much like watching Dora the Explorer, and she is going on an adventure, doing all the work for you, but sometimes she asks you a question, so that way you feel involved. I'm getting that vibe, and I get that vibe from a lot of Warriors games, which is a big turnoff for me. I like to be able to defeat enemies in multiple ways, which I'm sure you can in Warriors games. I'm sure there's more ways that you can beat an enemy, but it seems that there's just one main optimized way to beat every single main enemy boss fight, which is sad. It really is the complete opposite of what it seemed like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom strive to be. So, I mean, I've got a few problems with the game. The game looks great. I can't lie, the game looks very good. The cel-shaded graphics, it's not for everybody, but if you really like how Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild look, it's very much that. And I mean, it's a little bit more cel-shaded, it's a little bit more cartoony graphically, I think. A lot less organic looking. But I'm sure the story's good. It's just following the storyline that was happening in the backgrounds of Tears of the Kingdom, which is a really cool thing. I was very into the idea of being able to see that story unfold, but personally I just can't get past what Warriors games are, and I just didn't have fun, to be honest with you. It just wasn't a fun experience. I would say this is probably the first physical release for the Switch 2 that I just did not like. I mean, obviously Drag X Drive came out and I talked about how much that game sucked, and how limited it was, but this is my first, it feels like the first real big first party release that they were very much advertising. That just isn't my thing, and I just can't justify putting a lot of hours into it when I have so many other things I want to play instead. But yeah, that's about it. That's kind of just my basic idea of Age of Imprisonment and just Warriors games as a whole. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan, and I like to experiment and try with all types of games. I don't like the simplicity of Warriors games. I don't like the kind of game tells you what to do, you do it, and then that's it. You know, like, it's just not fun to me. I'm sure it's somebody's thing. I'm not saying don't go get Age of Imprisonment. I'm not saying it's a bad game necessarily. I'm saying I don't like it, and I don't think I would ever like a Warriors game if they're like this for the most part. Thank you everybody so much for watching. See you guys in the next Backlogs video, and bye-bye.